thing out there on its own for people that don't know, because he looks so squeaky clean. But
I almost bought the bullshit, dude. I almost bought it. I still want to buy it, and I just can't. I can't.
But I don't think that he's a bad person. I think he's a good person who's made some choices that maybe weren't fully educated to him.
I think at best what you can say is he tried to play the game when he first got in office, and what you have to do to get ahead in democratic politics is you have to have an APAC guy, and you have to support Israel to be, or otherwise you're going to be primaried by APAC. So if you look at it that way, then maybe somehow you can see how like he's still trying to do some kind of good.
You think AOC got an APAC guy? That's what happened to her.
I don't know what happened to AOC, but I haven't been happy with AOC for a long time.
I know. That's why this is kind of along the same lines, right?
Yeah.
Like getting into biting off more than you can chew, I guess, essentially.
Well, to get to this position where he's at, he's had to do things he didn't want to do, right? Or he did want to do them, or he did want to do. I don't know. We don't know yet.
I wanted to believe that somebody who's said as many good things as he has said is a good person. But I mean, like I said before, everyone's got something bad that they've done. I mean, you can pull up dirt on everyone and anyone, and it doesn't matter who they are. You know, I'm pretty sure you can pull up. You can literally pull up bad stuff on freaking what's her name, the preacher lady who was like, "Let God heal you. Don't go to the hospital." And she's like, "Oh no, I'm dying. I need to go to a hospital." That lady. What's her name?
I don't know.
The old nun that everybody talks
Mother
about.
Teresa?
Mother Teresa. Even Mother Teresa is not as squeaky clean as she was made out to be.
Neither was Gandhi.
Neither was Gandhi. So nobody's going to be 100% and perfect all the time. Everyone's going to fuck up somehow. We have mistakes we've made in our pasts and stuff. So just as lonely, low bottom feeders that we are, you know, if we had more money and stuff and the temptation of money, we might make wrong choices as well. I mean, I thought you said that was the last Gaza story.
It was.
This is still about Gaza.
No, it's about Israel.
Which, if you mention Israel,
actually, it has stuff about Gaza in here. Actually, so, yeah.
Which is fine. It's so depressing. It's hard to read because it's so depressing. That's the only thing. Like every time I read it, I can't believe the things I'm reading are things that are happening this day and age. Like these feel like things that would have happened in World War II. That we're reporting on World War II incidents. That's what it feels like, not 2024. And it's hard to read that these things are fucking happening, and we're letting it. We're not just letting it, we're funding it and supporting it. And I hate it. We're forced to support a genocide. I've been working all this time to support a genocide.
Yeah.
So why work? I don't want to support it. I don't want to be a part of it.
General strike.
This is from Mondowise. Strong record of supporting the U.S.-Israel relationship. A look at Tim Walz votes on Palestine as a member of Congress.
A review of Tim Walz's time in Congress from 2007 to 2018 shows he supported multiple Israeli wars on Gaza, rejected the international consensus on the illegality of West Bank settlements, and opposed any unilateral declaration of a Palestinian state. When Kamala Harris selected Minnesota Governor Tim Walz over Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro as her vice presidential running mate, many viewed it as a win for pro-Palestine constituents of the Democratic Party. Shapiro's long history of pro-Israel positions and questionable ties to Israel, as well as his publicly inflammatory statements against Palestinians and their supporters, appeared to be key reasons Harris passed him over, but can Tim Walz be viewed as much better?
Absolutely.
A review of Walz's career shows that he can be fairly characterized as a reliable pro-Israel Democrat who has consistently voted for and taken positions in support of Israel. In fact, it is this very history that has led Israel lobby groups within the Democratic Party to celebrate Harris's choice, which should give us all pause. While Walz's time as Minnesota governor has received much attention, it was announced he would become Harris's running mate. It is actually his time in Congress that might shed the most light on how we will look to influence foreign policy from the executive branch. The record shows that during his career as a member of the House of Representatives between 2007 and 2018, Walz consistently voted in favor of pro-Israeli positions. In these years, he supported every Israeli war on Gaza, rejected the international consensus on the illegality of settlements in the West Bank, and opposed any unilateral declaration of a Palestinian state, preferring instead to pay lip service to a negotiated peace while Israel continued colonizing the West Bank unimpeded. In fact, it is Walz's support for previous assaults on Gaza that are among his most alarming votes. On January 9, 2009, Walz voted yes on blatantly biased Resolution 34, which essentially endorsed the pro-Israeli position on Operation Cast Lead, the Israeli assault on Gaza between December 27th and 2008 and January 18th, 2009. Resolution 34 called on nations to condemn Hamas for deliberately embedding its fighters, leaders, and weapons in private homes, schools, mosques, hospitals, and otherwise using Palestinian civilians as human shields while simultaneously targeting Israeli civilians. It is also sought to lay blame both for the breaking of the calm and for the subsequent civilian casualties in Gaza, precisely where the blame belongs, that is, on Hamas.
So he voted yes.
Yeah.
I can't even go further.
According to the UN, a total of 1,419 Palestinians were killed in the Israeli occupation forces attacks, of whom 82% were civilians. 5,300 people were injured, and around 5,300 houses were completely or partially destroyed, where only 3 Israeli civilians were killed. Furthermore, according to the report of the United Nations Fact-Finding Mission on the Gaza conflict, also known as the Goldstone Report, the mission found no evidence that Palestinian combatants mingled with the civilian population with the intention of shielding themselves from attack. The mission is unable to make any determination on the general allegation that Palestinian armed groups used mosques for military purposes. The mission did not find any evidence to support the allegations that hospital facilities were used by the Gaza authorities or by Palestinian armed groups to shield military activities. The mission found no indication that the civilian population was forced by Hamas or Palestinian armed groups to remain in areas under attack from the Israeli armed forces. The report did find, however, that Israel used Palestinians as human shields in up to 4 instances in contravention of international humanitarian law. The Goldstone report also found that some of the actions of the government of Israel might justify a competent court finding that crimes against humanity have been committed. And so, perhaps not surprisingly, the U.S. Congress also went after the Goldstone report itself. Resolution 867 claims that the report is biased and unworthy of further consideration or legitimacy. Resolution 867 further calls on the President and Secretary of State to oppose any endorsement of the report in a multilateral fora, including through leading oppositions to any UN General Assembly resolution and through vetoing any UN Security Council resolution that endorses the report's contents. Walz saw fit to vote yes to this resolution on November 3, 2009, again in line with the position of the Israeli government. On November 16, 2012, Resolution 813 was passed by a vote in the House. Since the vote was without objection, no record of individual votes were made, but the implication is that Walz supported the resolution. Resolution 813 expresses unwavering commitment to the security of Israel as a Jewish and democratic state with secure borders and supports its inherent right to act in self-defense to protect its citizens against acts of terrorism, and was passed as Israel was assaulting Gaza as part of the Operation Pillar of Defense. According to the UN, during the operation, IOF killed 171 Palestinians, 60% civilians, including 35 children, 14 women. 650 were wounded, and 280 houses were completely or partially destroyed. In contrast, 4 Israeli civilians were killed. On July 11, 2014, Resolution 657 was passed by a vote in the House. Since the vote was without objection, no record of individual votes was made, but the implication is that Walz supported the resolution. Resolution 657 reaffirms the support of the House of Representatives for Israel's right to defend its citizens and ensure Israel's survival, and condemns the unprovoked rocket attack at Israel and calls on Hamas to cease all rocket attacks and other attacks against Israel, and was passed as Israel was engaged in the most destructive of all its wars against Gaza up to that date. As part of the Operation Protective Edge, which lasted between July 8th and August 26th, according to the UN report, Israel killed 2,251 Palestinians, including 1,400 civilians, of whom 300 women and 550 children died. 11,200 Palestinians, including 300 3,540 women and 3,500 children were also injured, of whom 10% suffered permanent disability as a result. In contrast, 6 civilians were killed in Israel. In addition, 18,000 housing units were destroyed in whole or in part. Much of the electricity network and of the water and sanitation infrastructure was incapacitated, and 73 medical facilities and many ambulances were damaged. Many Palestinians were uprooted from their homes or temporary shelters multiple times at the height of the hostilities. The number of internally displaced persons reached 500,000, or 28% of the population. In 2009, Walz visited Israel and the occupied West Bank on a Middle East tour, where he met with Benjamin Netanyahu and told the Israelis he believes the growing number of Jewish settlements in the West Bank were hampering the prospects for peace. However, in March 2010, when tension between the Obama administration and the Netanyahu government was bubbling to the surface over the construction of settlements in East Jerusalem, Walz chose to attend and speak at the annual APAC conference, where he stated that Israel is our truest and closest ally in the region, with a commitment to values of personal freedoms and liberties, surrounded by a pretty tough neighborhood. Furthermore, his 2009 statement on settlements is at odds with his voting record on the issue. Indeed, Walz voted yes to Resolution 11 on January 5, 2017, which opposes United Nations Security Council Resolution 2334 that passed on December 23, 2006 by a vote of 14-0, with the United States abstaining, and that describes the UN resolution as an obstacle to Israeli-Palestinian peace. UNSC 2334 reaffirmed that the establishment by Israel of settlements in the Palestinian territory occupied since 1967, including East Jerusalem, has no legal validity and constitutes a flagrant violation under international law and a major obstacle to the achievement of the two-state solution and a just, lasting, and comprehensive peace. However, it uses weaker language on Israeli settlements than prior resolutions, and could potentially allow Israel to retain already existing settlements beyond the 1967 lines through negotiations. Still, this was one of the rare instances where the Obama administration deviated from Israeli policy by not vetoing the resolution, and Walz still saw it fit to oppose his own Democratic administration on this issue. This brings us to the current day, where in his role as Minnesota governor, Walz has paid some lip service to Palestinian concerns, but maintained his staunch support for Israel and opposed legislative action to hold it accountable even during a genocide. Walz has made some encouraging remarks after the Minnesota Democratic primaries in March of this year about the voters in the uncommitted movement, 19% of Minnesota's Democratic electorate, signaling to Democratic leadership that they should not take their votes for granted in light of the Biden administration's support for Israel's genocide in Gaza. Speaking to CNN, Walz said that they were engaged and that we're really proud of Minnesota's civic responsibility. We have some of the highest voter turnouts. These are voters that are deeply concerned, as we all are. The situation in Gaza is intolerable. The day after, in an interview, Walz told NPR news host Kathy Werzer that he certainly calls for a ceasefire in Gaza. It has to be a working ceasefire. I've asked for these humanitarian pauses to get folks out. I want this thing to end. I don't want a ceasefire to last for a week or something like that. We need a permanent solution. However, it is unlikely that these words of sympathy will actually translate to tangible actions that put pressure on the Netanyahu government to end their genocide in Gaza. Indeed, Walz hasn't called for an arms embargo or sanctions on Israel, and Harris's national security advisor, Phil Gordon, recently clarified that Harris does not support an arms embargo or taken any other meaningful policy positions that would potentially result in the end to Israel's mass slaughter. In November of last year, as the Gaza genocide was unfolding, he faced protests by pro-Palestinian activists who urged the Walz administration to stop investing state employee retirement funds in the Israeli government and defense contractors who supply arms to that nation. In February of this year, protesters called on the state to cut financial ties with Israel ahead of Thursday's State Board of Investment meeting, where dozens of Minnesotans spoke in favor of divestment from accounts that benefit Israel. According to Walz's office, $116 million is invested in support of Israel, although per pro-Palestinian activists, investments total over $3 billion, including indirect investments and entitles that profit from Israel, such as weapons manufacturing companies like Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman. There is a precedent for the State Board of Investors to divest from companies and funds that support violations of international law, as the board moved on its own to divest from South Africa in the 1980s in response to apartheid.
Oh, you could do it in the fucking 80s. You can't do it in 2024. It's 2024.
Furthermore, Walz signed legislation directing the board to divest from Russia as punishment for the invasion of Ukraine.
Are you serious? Sorry.
No, that's hypocritical. Although state legislation prevents Minnesota from engaging in discrimination against Israel per the state's anti-BDS law. Still, as of today, anti-BDS law, wow. Still, as of today, Walz has given no indication that he intends to support divestment of companies or funds that directly or indirectly support Israel's violation of human rights in Gaza and the West Bank, and recently canceled a meeting with Minnesota activists that took 10 months to schedule after they explained that they weren't just going to share their stories, but also press for policy changes. According to a staff person for Walz, the government was not prepared to talk about divestment.
Can I ask how divesting funds from Israel is against the BDS law, but if you divest from an African American continent
Or
country, how is that not?
It's because the anti-BDS is basically you can't boycott, divestment, or sanction Israel. It's against the law. So you can't divest from Israel in Minnesota. It's against the law.
That
Anti-BDS laws are against free speech, and they're unconstitutional.
so it's against the law to not fund a terrorist organization. That's what I'm hearing.
In early March of this year, in an interview with CNN, Walz said that he supports a lasting two-state solution, although he didn't provide any details as to what that entailed. His voting record suggests the typical support for a negotiated peace where Israel holds all the cards in opposition to unilateral declaration of Palestinian statehood. Indeed, on July 7, 2011, Walz voted yes to Resolution 268, which opposes any attempt to establish or seek recognition of a Palestinian state outside of an agreement negotiated between Israel and the Palestinians. It is unclear how a peace process that has been ongoing for over 30 years and has led to the immiseration of the Palestinian people will bring about a viable Palestinian state, especially in light of the recent decision by the Israeli Knesset to reject Palestinian statehood in a vote of 68 in favor and just 9 against. Coupled with his previously discussed position on settlements, Walz's position aligns with the mainstream of the Democratic Party, which pays lip service to a viable Palestinian state as part of a negotiated two-state settlement, while exerting no tangible pressure on Israel to adhere to international law as it continues to colonize the West Bank unimpeded. It's no surprise then that Mark Melman, president of Democratic Majority for Israel, praised Walz's selection and said that he was a proud pro-Israel Democrat with a strong record of supporting the U.S.-Israel relationship, while the pro-Israel lobby, J Street, who had previously endorsed him, said that we know the Harris-Walz team will stand up for our shared values, protect our community, and pursue smart pro-Israel, pro-peace leadership abroad. We're all in.